All right, buckle up because today we're going deep into the world of comedy. But with a bit of a twist. We're breaking down Cat Williams' interview on Shannon Sharp's club, Shay Shay. And I gotta say, it's not your typical, I'm here to promote my new project kind of interview.
Definitely not. I mean, he does mention his Dark Matters tour and his
Yeah.
Netflix special, of course. But he goes way beyond that. It gets pretty real.
Way deeper. He uses this platform to call out other big name comedians who were on the show before him. Guys like Ricky Smiley, Cedric the Entertainer, even Steve Harvey. And he's not holding back, directly challenging their stories, their careers, their whole approach to comedy.
It's kind of like he sees Club Shay as like a safe space to just let loose, to tell his truth. Which raises a really interesting question, right? Where do you go to like set the record straight when it's about personal experiences and especially in a field as, high stakes and competitive as comedy?
Totally. Right off the bat, he says he's there to stop what he calls losers from rewriting history. You get the sense that he feels this responsibility to protect his legacy. And not just his own legacy, but the legacy of comedy itself.
Absolutely. And it really makes you think about whose perspective matters, about who gets to control the narrative. Is it the people who achieve mainstream success or the ones who stay true to their artistic vision, even if it means less recognition, less fame?
And he's very specific, too, about why he's doing this. He even calls out Ricky Smiley for allegedly lying in a previous episode. It all centers around the role of Money Mike in Friday After Next, the character that basically made Cat Williams a superstar.
Right, right. And here's where things get kind of tense. Because Cat Williams is claiming that Ricky Smiley said he was originally offered that role. Cat Williams is adamant. More than 200 comedians auditioned for that part.
And not only that, he drops this bombshell. He says the original script actually had Money Mike getting raped. Yeah, he claims he straight up refused to do the scene, argued that rape is never funny and shouldn't be in a comedy, said he wouldn't do the film unless they took it out.
Wow, that's a powerful stance. It makes you think about the power dynamics at play, especially for comedians known for a specific style. Did Cat Williams, use his growing fame to keep control over his character? How often does this kind of thing happen in Hollywood?
It makes you wonder if him refusing to do it as written changed how people saw the movie, even how well it did. Could Friday After Next have been even bigger? It's definitely something to think about.
And Cat Williams says this is where the bad blood with Ricky Smiley started. He's implying that Smiley tried to, ride his coattails a little bit, insinuating that he was up for the part. It kind of speaks to that cutthroat competition that seems to be baked into the comedy world.
Absolutely. And it's not just Ricky Smiley he calls out. He also accuses Cedric the Entertainer of stealing a joke, his spaceship bit, and using it word for word on Kings of Comedy.
Yeah, this whole joke stealing thing, it always comes up in comedy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's a tough one. How do you prove who came up with something first in stand-up? So much of it is riffing on the same theme, shared experiences, and then there's the delivery, too. It's not just the words, it's how you say it.
Right. But Cat Williams lays out a pretty detailed timeline, saying he did the joke on BT's Comic View, Cedric was in the audience, and then boom, 2 years later, same joke on Kings of Comedy. And he even points out that it wasn't just any joke, it was his closer, one he'd worked on with other comedians, so it felt even more personal.
So it goes beyond just the stealing, right? It's about the disrespect, breaking that unspoken code between comedians. Was it parallel thinking? Or was it intentional? And you got to wonder how much of this is because they were, at least in Cat Williams' mind, competing for the same audiences, the same opportunities.
Definitely. And it seems to really bother him that this happened years ago and no one said anything. It goes back to that feeling that he has to fight to be heard, even within the comedy community.
Yeah, what are the unwritten rules? Is it every comedian for themselves? Or is there a level of respect, of giving credit? Is it a what happens on tour stays on tour kind of thing? Or should there be more accountability?
It's a sticky situation for sure. And this is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to Cat Williams' raw take on the comedy world. It's already clear this deep dive is going to be a wild ride.
One thing that really struck me as we kind of go further into this interview is how Cat Williams talks about the business side of comedy.
Mm-hmm.
He's surprisingly open about money, contracts, deals. He even talks about how, they measure success in laughs per minute.
It's like a crash course in being a comedian, like the business of it all. He talks about paying for his first stand-up special himself, like out of his own pocket, how he studies other comedians' acts. And he's big on this idea of building your brand, having loyal fans, that whole thing.
Yeah, and he even lays out how he built his career strategically, you know, starting in smaller cities, really owning those scenes before moving on to bigger places, eventually Hollywood. Really makes you think about that whole overnight success myth.
Totally. There's so much more to it than just being funny. You got to be smart, hustle hard, and really get your audience, connect with them on a deeper level.
And he's not afraid to call out what he sees as hypocrisy.
Yeah.
Like he mentions guys like Steve Harvey who say they don't do stand-up anymore because they're too successful. But Katt Williams is basically saying they can't keep up, that they're
Yeah.
not writing new material, they're not saying relevant.
Like they've chosen the easy road, the fame and fortune over the grind of stand-up. And he has a problem with comedians who use writers too. He's all about being original, authentic. That's real stand-up to him.
Makes you wonder, where's the line between collaborating and just relying on someone else? Is there a clear rule?
For him, there definitely is. And then he gets into this whole cabal idea, like there's this group controlling the industry, deciding who gets pushed and who gets left behind. He even names names. Kevin Hart, Tiffany Haddish, DC Youngfly, saying they've been like let in to this system.
Yeah, it definitely shows how frustrated he is with like the system feeling like it's rigged, favors certain voices over others. But it also makes you think, is some of this his own experience coloring his view?
For sure. Throughout the interview, you can feel him wrestling with this idea that talent and hard work aren't always enough. That sometimes it's about who you know, who accepts you, more than what you bring to the table.
And talking about feeling like the system's against you, he brings up cancel culture, says it's used unfairly, inconsistently. He uses Jonathan Majors as an example, the actor who got dropped from projects after those assault allegations,
Yeah.
and compares it to himself, how he's been arrested multiple times but can still work.
Yeah, like there's a double standard. And it's hard to ignore the racial aspect of it all, right? Are black men held to a different standard when it comes to scrutiny, consequences?
Really complex issue, and Katt Williams definitely adds to the conversation. Is cancel culture holding people accountable? Or is it, like he says, a way to silence certain voices, control the narrative?
And then there's this whole personal side to it all, too. Katt Williams gets really honest about his own struggles with addiction, mental health, the legal system. He talks about being addicted to nicotine, marijuana, using them to cope with the pressure, the constant touring.
That level of honesty, especially for someone as famous as him, it's pretty rare. He doesn't shy away from the tough stuff, even talking about how marijuana helped him sleep, eat, while on the road.
Yeah, he says he's been arrested 30 times, often for marijuana or guns. It gives you a glimpse into how crazy things can get, the toll it takes.
It's a different side to him, not the polished guy we see on stage. It humanizes him, reminds us that even those who seem larger than life go through real stuff, human stuff.
Makes you wonder if his comedy is like his way of dealing with it all, turning the pain, the struggle into something that connects with people, makes them laugh, maybe even helps them feel less alone.
It's that vulnerability, that willingness to show his flaws, that makes him relatable. He's not some perfect icon. He's a guy who's faced his demons and is still fighting.
And in all that darkness, there's also this strong faith that comes through. He talks about his connection to God, his desire to live a good life, even in a world that doesn't always line up with his beliefs.
He even says he wants to be God's friend.
Yeah.
That's a pretty deep statement, very personal. And I mean, it makes you rethink how we judge people based on their image. Can you be a rebel and a believer? Can you challenge things while still having strong morals?
Katt Williams seems to be living proof that you can, that those two sides can exist in one person. His faith is clearly important to him, even as he calls out hypocrisy in religious institutions, how religion's been used to justify bad things.
And it's interesting how he sees his comedy as part of his faith, as a way to speak truth to power, expose hypocrisy. He even says he feels a responsibility to afflict the comfortable, shake things up.
And speaking of shaking things up, he's not holding back on politics either. He criticizes both parties, says they've failed the people, that real change has to come from outside the system.
He even brings up Kanye West, criticizes how we label people as mentally ill while exploiting them for entertainment. He challenges the whole narrative around Kanye, says it's oversimplified, dehumanizing.
And he doesn't spare Kim Kardashian either, questions her choices, says she's part of this system that values money over principles. Katt Williams definitely doesn't hold back, even if it means upsetting powerful people.
It's that fearlessness, that willingness to go against the grain that makes him so interesting. He's a truth teller, a provocateur, a comedian who makes you laugh while making you think.
And one of the coolest parts is when he talks about acting. He describes this process of completely erasing himself from a role, then building the character up from nothing, using real-life stuff, observations, his own experiences, to create something new.
He mentions studying pimps for Money Mike in Friday After Next, and how he used his own experiences with poverty, being homeless, to inform other characters. It's almost like method acting, but with a comedic twist.
Yeah, and he talks about purposely making his characters memorable, even if it means stealing the scene from the lead actor. You can see the mischief in his eyes when he talks about it, like he enjoys pushing boundaries.
That combo of dedication and like playful rule breaking, that's what makes him so electrifying. Always in control, even when it feels like chaos.
He also talks about actors he admires, Denzel Washington, Daniel Day-Lewis, guys who can really transform. You can tell he respects acting, takes it seriously, even if his comedy persona overshadows that sometimes.
It's that duality again, the serious and the funny, the vulnerable and the strong, that makes him so fascinating. A comedian who's a serious actor, a provocateur who's deeply spiritual, a rebel who's fiercely loyal.
He's full of contradictions, and that's what makes him so interesting. You can't put him in a box, and that's part of his appeal. He keeps us guessing, defies expectations, reminds us that real life, like good comedy, is full of surprises.
Speaking of surprises, he's on his Dark Matters tour right now and has a new Netflix special coming out in May.
It'll be interesting to see what he does next, how his views on comedy change if he keeps this no-holds-barred approach.
One thing's for sure, Katt Williams isn't afraid to push limits, make you uncomfortable, and make you laugh while doing it.
He's a force of nature, a comedic whirlwind, and this interview gives us a peek into the mind of a truly unique talent. So, as we wrap up this deep dive into Katt Williams, there's one thing that keeps coming back to me.
Oh yeah, what's that?
It's like this clash, right? Between how aggressive he can be, calling people out, accusing them of stuff. But then on the other side, he's doing these really generous things, sponsoring Melora Hardin's Walk of Fame star, helping other comedians out, even adopting 7 kids. It's almost like, is it the same guy?
It is a real head scratcher, isn't it? Like, can you be this warrior for truth, which is how he seems to see himself, and also be this really caring, compassionate person? Is it like situational, or is it just he's got both sides in him?
He does say this one thing that's really interesting. He's talking about how he wants to expose the truth, even if it's ugly, even if it hurts people. Like, it's his job to speak out against hypocrisy, injustice, no matter what.
And that need to tell the truth, it seems to apply to his own life, too. He's so open about his past, his mistakes, the addiction, the legal troubles, no sugarcoating, no trying to hide it.
It's kind of refreshing, actually, in a world where everyone's image is so controlled, so perfect. And here's Katt Williams just putting it all out there, flaws and all, like take it or leave it.
I think that's a big part of why people are drawn to him. He's not trying to fit into any mold, what a comedian's supposed to be, what a celebrity's supposed to be, even what a person's supposed to be. He's just Katt Williams, messy, brilliant, all of it.
Exactly. And maybe that's the lesson here, the takeaway from all this. Maybe it's a challenge to all of us listening to think about our own values, what success means to us. Can you achieve big things and still be true to yourself, even when the world's trying to put you in a box?
Katt Williams seems to think so, yeah. His journey, as crazy as it's been, proves that he's done it his way, and he's calling out those who he thinks sold out along the way.
He definitely leaves us with a lot to chew on. The nature of truth, the price of success, staying true to yourself, maybe even a little inspiration, to embrace who you are, to fight for what you believe in, even when it's hard, even when it means going against the grain.
He's a good reminder that the truth, even when it's messy, even when it's hard to hear, it's powerful. And sometimes the best stories are the ones that don't fit neatly into any category. The stories that make you question, make you rethink, make you look at your own life a little differently.
Absolutely. Well, that's it for this deep dive. We'll be back next time with another topic, another conversation about the things that matter. Until then, keep asking those questions, keep exploring, and keep the conversation going.